welcome back to Social Work Sorted, the podcast. My name is Vicki. I'm a social worker, a safeguarding consultant and founder of the Social Work Collective Academy. And today I'm going to be talking about direct work with children, specifically direct work with infants. This is massively inspired by Harry Ferguson's new book. It's called Making Child Protection Work. And if you've been to any of my training, if you are a member of the Collective Academy, you'll know I reference Harry Ferguson a lot. He is, you're probably familiar if you're watching this already, but he is an academic and previously a social worker in practice who did a significant amount of field research, so going out with social workers on home visits. He is the person who has, researched home visits the most in social work. They still remain something that are not spoken about enough in statutory guidance or in policy. As someone who reads statutory guidance for fun, I know, it's just me, I have been through working together, I can't even tell you how many times, I probably read it about once a week to be honest with you, looking for references to the home visit because it is something that we do so often as social workers, and yet it is one area where I know early career social workers feel that they just do not have enough guidance and support on. So in this episode, I'm going to give you one takeaway, one thing that you can start doing on your home visits or introduce to your home visits that will support you to centre children. Now, why is that important? Every single serious case review that has been issued ever, I would say, even ones that are more recent, always mention the voice of the child. There are always significant points where a child could have been interacted with where they haven't. Now, this is not about blame and shame of professionals. We have to recognise that we are working in, whether social workers or safeguarding professionals, working under significant pressure, significant cuts to resources, very, very difficult circumstances. So we need to just remove blame and shame from this conversation because it's not helpful, it doesn't help us move forward. But something that is significant and consistent through serious case reviews is actually the voice of the child. And we know from any that we read, there are opportunities where someone could have interacted with a child at their level. This links in massively to what Harry Ferguson talked about, I think first in 2017, about the concept of an invisible child. Now, if you told me when I started in social work that it would be really difficult for me to go to a home visit and not truly see a child, I probably wouldn't have believed you, because I would have said, well, but that's my job, I'm going to be a children's social worker, of course I'm going to see a child on a home visit. But what Harry Ferguson found, and what I definitely found in my early career, is actually how difficult it is to have that connection with a child on a home visit, to truly see them, not just in passing, to have that time with them, to observe them, to start to build a relationship with them. And that's because in the systems that exist around children, there are lots of adults. So when you go on a home visit, usually the first person that you're interacting with is an adult. When you're in meetings, the majority of people are adults. There are grown-ups making decisions about children all the time. So they don't just become lost in the home visit, they become lost in the wider story, even though our focus is supposed to be them. And there's lots of amazing work that is happening to shift that, but it still occurs on home visits, because you could step into somebody's front door, be expecting one thing and getting another. You, as a social worker, are bombarded in terms of your sensory overload. You might smell something, you're seeing something, you're hearing, you're observing, you might be feeling something. A lot of things happen at the same time. You're also usually going on a home visit with an agenda, and I don't mean that in a sinister way, but you are either going because there's been a referral, you are going because you're seeking information, you're going to potentially make a risk assessment, for example. So actually that becomes your priority on a home visit. And yes, that involves seeing a child, but with all these things thrown into the mix, it becomes easy to see how children become invisible. One thing that you can focus on and you can take away from this episode and bring into practice immediately is the concept of greeting a child first. Now, if you've sat there thinking, well, of course I always greet a child first, Vicki, maybe this episode's not for you, but maybe it might be a nice refresher for you, because I know I still need that reminder when I work with children, which I still do, and I work with a lot of infants, a lot of babies, 0 to 12 months, I still have to give myself that reminder that I'm going to greet them first, and that's what I want to talk about today. Now, there is a specific chapter in Harry Ferguson's new book, Making Child Protection Work, where he talks about working directly with infants. And actually, parts of that chapter argue that instead of us saying working with children and young people, we actually should start saying working with infants, children, and young people to really identify the level of vulnerability that an infant group has, that 0 to 2 or 0 to 3 stage, when babies are often pre-mobile and pre-verbal. He found in his visits going out alongside social workers that there were massive variables in the way social workers interacted with infants. So you can apply this to children of all age, this idea of greeting them first, but I want to give you the example with infants because often that can be where there's a bit of dissonance, I would say, in home visits. So are you greeting children first when you go in? I'm not saying that you walk into a house and you just completely ignore the parents and don't say anything to them. We're obviously going to say hello. But what I found as a social worker is I would often go straight into a conversation with parents. Maybe there was a form we needed to fill in, maybe there was information I needed to clarify. And I might greet the children, but actually taking the time to properly greet them is very different from saying, hello, I'll see you in a minute, or I'll come and bring some crayons in a minute. Are we making them the absolute focus of our attention when we walk in the house? How do we do that? Well, with every child, the first thing we do is we use our body. Carnal social work is what it's referenced as. I'll leave a reference in the show notes of this podcast episode. But carnal social work, our body helps us deliver messages in social work. So actually, how are we directing our body towards a child? Can we move towards them, or can we shift our focus towards them? Because when we do that, we shift everybody else's focus towards them as well. We let them know that that child is the most important person in the room. And that is massive, particularly when we're thinking about modelling and teachable moments. Then we're going to go and talk to the child. A lot of time I'll speak to early career social workers and they'll say, yeah, I talk to children when they can talk to me. No, we're going to go and talk to the child even if the child can't speak. We're going to go over to baby if they're in mum or dad's arms or if they're in a cot, and we're going to say, hello, I'm Vicki. I've come to visit you today. You're looking at me and you're probably thinking, who is this strange person? But I'm just letting you know that I'm here. It's nice to see you. You're going to hear my voice and I'm talking to mum and dad today. The first pushback I get when I talk about this in training is, I just don't want to seem silly. It's going to be a bit embarrassing, isn't it? I want you to hold that. If you're having that thought of thinking, I couldn't do that, I'd be too embarrassed, let's just sit with that for a minute. You kind of need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. If you work with children, you need to be silly. I don't know any other way to say it. Children's first language, for me, is play. So if being silly, if using a different tone of voice, if focusing on that child and talking to them, even though they're not talking to you back, feels difficult or uncomfortable or embarrassing, that is something that you need to work on and work through, perhaps in your supervision. And perhaps you need to practice it a little bit more, being silly and uncomfortable. I've had this situation many times. I continue to get it. And actually, sometimes I will do that and parents will laugh. Laughter is so helpful for us because it really, really teaches us something. It tells us possibly that people just find something funny, but it can also be a sign of discomfort. And so when that happens, when parents laugh, I will say, do you know what? A lot of the time, parents laugh at me when I do that, especially when I do that kind of silly voice. Can I tell you why I do it? And then you're able to say, do you know what? Babies actually really like that kind of voice. And I know I do it and it's exaggerated, it might sound a bit silly, but I know from research, babies really love that. And then you can say, I wonder if you've noticed, do you change your voice around your baby? Or do you notice what they do when you sing songs to them? Do you notice that they react? They actually really, really like it. And even though they can't understand what we're saying, they understand how we say it. A bit the same as us as grown-ups. And instead of it being something that is massively embarrassing for you, it is number one, a moment to model to parents. Number two, potentially a moment to teach and support them in learning about their baby. It's also a moment to observe and assess because you might get a parent who disagrees with you. That is really, really informative. It tells us that they maybe don't have some information or don't have some knowledge about child development. And we can help them with that. But it's also that opportunity to show that child that they matter. Regardless of how old they are, they need to know that they're important. They deserve our attention. They deserve our fixed attention for a certain amount of time. They deserve to be interacted with because they are also a human in the room. And so even by doing that, that is something that takes maybe 2 or 3 minutes. It is so, so valuable. So when you can move past a point of embarrassment to that will make such a difference for you as a social worker. A lot of the time, people might say, well, Vicky, what if the baby's asleep? Now, it's really important to think in terms of our levels of risk here, because if we're going to a visit all the time, and every time we go, if we're going at different times in the day, and a baby is asleep, we may be in a situation where we are requesting that somebody wakes the baby up. But we need to be really, really careful about that, because as a parent, I don't particularly want to wake a baby up if they are fast asleep. But I also know as a social worker, it's so important for me to see them awake. If they are asleep, and I'm comfortable with the fact that they're asleep, and I know I'm going to come back again later, or I know that somebody else is coming later, or someone's been that morning and seen them asleep, I'm still going to go and say hello to the baby. I'm going to whisper, because I don't want to wake them up, but I might just say, hello, I'm just letting you know that I'm here, it's Vicky. I'm going to be a new voice in the room, you're going to hear me, I know you'll hear me even though you're asleep, and I'm just letting you know that I'm chatting to mummy and daddy. Because again, we are valuing the baby in the room, we are showing everybody in the room that that baby is a human who is here and who has capacity to listen to us. Because it's not unusual for some parents to think that when babies are asleep, they can't hear what's going on. So we can actually show that and demonstrate that in that moment in a way that isn't invasive. We're modelling, again, all the time. I really want you to take this away with you, again, without blame or shame. If you know that it is your absolute habit that you say hello to children, you know, they are your first priority on a visit, and you say hello to them, you take that time with them, you get on their level, you're speaking in a tone of voice that they like, or you're connecting with them in some way, even if you're not using your voice, it might be you have a little fidget in your bag and you pass it to them and they pass it back. You're still taking that time to focus on them when you do your first visit, then that is something you're doing that's really strong, that you can reflect on and you can build on. If you know that there are some visits where you don't do that, or some visits where you've been so stressed you haven't done that, it is not going to be helpful for you to go, oh no, I should have done that. What is helpful for you is to think about, okay, well, what can I do differently next time? And I talk about this in the masterclasses inside the Social Work Collective Academy in much more detail. We talk about this when I deliver training in much more detail, but we can prepare people for what's going to happen on a home visit. If we know the home visit is announced, i.e. we're going to ring someone up and say, can I come and visit? We're only doing unannounced visits if we have a genuine reason for it in safeguarding. We can prepare people and say, I'm just going to let you know, usually when I come on home visits, I'll say hi to you and then I spend a couple of minutes with each child, or I'll always make sure I go and say hello to your children, is that okay? Then, when we get to the home visit, we're going to remind the person of that. Do you remember on the phone I told you that I'm just going to go around and say hello to the children? Is that all right? I'm going to do that now. So we're going to reinforce it. We're going to say what we're going to do before we do it, then we're going to do it. And if that happens every single time, it will become a habit for you. So it's really, really helpful to think about. You can do this from today, from tomorrow, whenever your next home visit is. And yes, I've given you the example of infants because that can often be a challenge for social workers, which I recognise. But this works right up until 18 and beyond, really, because we know childhood doesn't really end at 18 if we read anything about transitional safeguarding. If you've got a child who is in their room and they don't want to come out and they don't want to see you, we're still going to go and knock on the door and say hello. And when we leave, we're going to go knock on the door and say goodbye. Always giving the opportunity, and again, showing them that they are important, we value them. Because what does it say to a child if we're on a visit and we don't even make an attempt to interact with them? So sit with that, reflect on it, let me know your views in the comments, let me know if things have ever been challenging for you, let me know what you might do differently in practice. It's all really helpful. Please make sure that comments stay ethical. We don't want to be talking about our experiences with families on a public platform. If you are interested in joining the Social Work Collective Academy, where there is a host of training that covers home visits, how to plan, how to prepare, things to think about, scripts for difficult conversations that you might have before, during or after. We have got support in terms of assessment skills as well, which is obviously linked to our home visits. And we have an amazing practice pause library. So we have mindfulness meditations, guided audios for before a home visit and after a home visit, because we have to regulate first before we then go in to do this kind of communication and interaction. And if you're interested in any of the communication skills training, any training for early career social workers, all the links you need to book in a chat with me are in the show notes as well. I just want to encourage you now to take a practice pause. If it feels comfortable for you, close your eyes. If not, just pick somewhere in the room that you can focus on and take a couple of deep breaths. Know that this is a pause in your day that you can come back to whenever you need to regulate your heart rate, to support your decision making, and to bring a little pocket of calm. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you for the next episode.